Well, hello there, all you high thinkers and folks that I hope are thinking in general. Said hi here again. And today, before jumping into more of the propaganda and public relations techniques, thought I'd start at the bottom here with brainwashing. Yes, and this even talking about it and reading about it bothers me a lot. I guess as a kid growing up on a farm, um, pretty hard headed in general. You can just ask my kids or friends, but um, sometimes you go out into a field in the wintertime or looking for a cow or whatever, and you get out there someplace or get to doing something, and the weather changes and gets a lot worse. Well, you got to walk back, and I'm talking when I was younger than 10. You got to get home by yourself because there's no cell phone or nothing else. You got to have the will to survive and get out there and do it. So this is especially disturbing to me as what I would consider to be a strong-willed person. So brainwashing techniques are just giving me nightmares. So in trying to get ready for this kind of, again, it just bothers me a lot to talk about this and to think that there are people that can implement this on their fellow mankind. I mean, uh, it's just it's boggling, but that's a whole nother subject in itself and something, hopefully psychology and stuff will start figuring this stuff out. And but until then, this stuff is still going on in the world today. And so I found on the CIA website an interesting article that was written in 1956, but declassified in 1999. And it basically goes over the Soviet and the Communist China's techniques for brainwashing people. And for China, it's called re-education program, to get you to forget your religion and your traditions and everything else, but become part of their society. And so at the beginning of this document, though, this is interesting. I think here's a statement. This is from A. Koff's book written in 1939. I'll put the rest of the information in the details if you want to look up that book. But here's a quote from the book from page 156. We know now that men can be made to do exactly anything. It's all a question of finding the right means. If only we take enough trouble and go sufficiently slowly, we can make him kill his aged parents and eat them in a stew. Okay, so they put this in their CIA document for this report they're making on the brainwashing techniques that they've researched. However, they got that information, I don't know, too. And if you have the stomach for it, you can go through it, and it talks about how, and I guess for China, it was Tibet and Mongolia and the different indigenous people, and trying to break them of their traditions and religious beliefs. And well, their general population, I believe, is also treated this way. Again, I don't know. This is just my understanding from what I've read and everything that I can see that's going on. And it appears to be this way that the Chinese call it their re education program. Now, when you really get into these brainwashing techniques, it's torture, straight up torture, but it's just given a different name and makes it sound softer. I mean, it's horrible enough, brainwashing. And that's another propaganda technique, and I have trouble finding the right description of it, but I would almost call it word hijacking, like the enhanced interrogation techniques that Dick Cheney liked to use. I mean, it's torture. I mean, let's just get down to it. But, anyways, so they call it the re education system in China. But basically, in the Soviet Union, if you get accused of crime, you'll get this done to you or this used to happen, and I'm sure it still does. We'll get into that a little more. But basically, if you've been accused of crime, you get brought in and you get interrogated. And the interrogation, and remember, this is before the trial. This is, you have to go through this and confess before you even get the trial to find out what your punishment is. And it involves things like, and once again, you can read the document if you've got the stomach for it, but say total isolation in a room that's basically soundproof, total sensory deprivation, one light in the ceiling, maybe facilities to go to the bathroom, probably horrible food, um, set hours for sleeping. They will change that up so that it totally messes up your clock, which is already messed up because you're in sensory deprivation. And then they take you out for interrogation, and that's basically sitting in a chair across from somebody with a light shine on you that you've seen a million movies probably, and forced to answer questions and basically end up uh, saying what they want you to say. And it's got to be just like they want you to say it. And they can also, while they're interrogating you, they can make you stand until you basically your legs are ready to collapse. They'll, when your veins start doing things and the fluids in your body start changing because you've been standing for so long. Uh, if you pass out, they don't want you to die. So there's actually also a doctor there that starts trying to take care of you and rehab you back to where you can go through more of the interrogation process until they're satisfied that you are totally broken and will confess to whatever crimes that they say that you've been accused of. So again, you can read the document, and but this is in the societies where the government has total control, and obviously evil people are in charge. But this is happening now. I mean, this is still in China. This is still in Russia. I mean, that's what the Ukrainians are fighting against because Putin's distracting by starting a war. A whole nother thing. Don't want to get into all that. But to think that there are people in the world that can go that far to manipulate people, and I guess so. The next thing I want to get into is, so if you're in a society, a democratic government where people vote and have rights, and you want to manipulate them, how do you do it? Because that's what really psychiatry, and then later on, um, Edward Bernays and propaganda started really making scientific research or documenting in a scientific method how these things work. But most people don't really understand or know about them, which is kind of strange because we're exposed to, well, and that's again, they've taken the word, public relations and made it softer where it's more acceptable and doesn't seem so bad, but it can be used in really, really bad ways. But to finish off this little thing about brainwashing, here's a few of the interesting statements in the document that stood out to me. So somewhere in there it says brainwashing can be successfully accomplished on the basis of present knowledge by anyone sufficiently interested in acquiring an understanding of the psychological principles involved. Scary. Okay. The intensive individual process during which individuals are deprived of their critical facilities and if I could talk, subsequently come to believe as true that which prior to the brainwashing they would have designed as false. So basically, you can convince people that clouds are really mashed potatoes, and once they're done with this, that clouds are going to be mashed potatoes. Anyway, next, the change represents a more or less complete re-education of his value system. So, like if you had a religious belief, whatever, I mean, it's they can wipe it out. All right, here's another. This one's a good one. Public understanding of the process should help considerably. I think, so that you know about the techniques and maybe you can say, they're trying to manipulate me. Granted, in brainwashing, you're stuck, man, because they run the government. And if there's nobody coming to help you in those situations, I mean, it just gives me nightmares. Anyway, one last thing. The man in the street is not so removed from pre scientific beliefs that such processes as brainwashing fail to arouse emotions bordering on superstitious awe. Man, I'm having trouble talking today. Um, yeah, so that to me is just really scary stuff. And I felt like I ought to cover that because a lot of people don't even realize that's going on. Sure, you see it in the movies, or you think, I guess, or maybe it's just me because living in this kind of society, it's just hard for me to imagine that people can do that kind of thing. Anyway, but the next thing I need to get into is okay, if you don't live in a society where the government's like fascist or communist or, like that, and have total control over you, how do you manipulate the population? Well, we'll get into that more next in the what's called undue influence and mind control. All right, doesn't that sound fun? Gosh, I hate this. Anyway, that's it for me today. So don't play this if you want to get cheered up. And anyway, so that's my high thoughts for today. So remember to keep thinking those high thoughts. And despite this horrible content, I hope you have a groovy day.